Digital radio, digital TV, downloads and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
With Stephen Nolan.
OK, so we'll have a look through all of tomorrow morning's newspapers with Bishop Stephen Lowe and Charlie Wolfe at midnight this evening. On the show last night, we asked what makes you happy, with a massive response on the text. Many people... like me, they love to live by the sea. Others were talking of the joy that they get from spending time with family and friends. And then one text stood out from all of the rest. It was a man who was Steve from Wolverhampton. And here's what he wrote to us last night. He said, "I'm constantly happy, but I was diagnosed with terminal cancer last September, and I'm even happier now." Now, obviously, that caught my attention. And so I've been speaking to Steve. It's thought-provoking. Have a listen to this.
Last September, I was breathless, and something was wrong. A blood test revealed that I was anemic, because you're told if there's any changes, always go to the doctor. The doctor said I obviously had an ulcer, so I had an endoscopy, which is the camera down your throat, and the endoscopy showed that I had a tumour, which was, as you can imagine, a little bit disappointing. And quite a surprise. And
you thought, of course, you were going in, and it was an ulcer.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, let's be very cruel about this. I'm never going to get cancer, am I? Because other people get cancer. Well, I'm afraid that is 100% wrong. It doesn't mind who it visits. It has no discrimination at all. So,
how old were you at the time, Steve?
It was last September, so I was 50.
And what was your life like?
I'm very active. I'm someone who likes to be busy. I'm very blessed, you know. I worked for Wolverhampton Council as a building surveyor. I was their chief building surveyor, one of the two chief building surveyors. And I'd done that and got to that post over 32 years as a hobby job, if you like. I used to work at, and still do, at the Wolverhampton Civic Halls, where I was one of their duty managers. That took me out into the world of working at music festivals, which I did during the summer months. And as a hobby, going back 20 years plus, I was a magician and still am a member of the Magic Circle. So all of those things led for a very full and active life. You're then told that you've got cancer, and I can only speak for myself. This interview is all about my journey and the journey of my friends. I can't comment about other people's. What I can say is that I think I'm fairly safe in saying everyone's journey is unique. So my journey was by trying to be as normal as possible. And physically, I just wasn't capable of that. Then, of course, the specialist area that you are now covered by, oncology, kicks in within the National Health Service and is quite marvellous.
Hello, thank you very much for how you have raced through this really quickly, even tonight, because it's just hitting me now. You know, you were 50 years of age, everything was going fine. You go into hospital for what you thought was a routine operation, and they tell you have cancer. Now, but before we race on to how fantastic things still are with you, and you're dying, Steve.
Well, yes, but if you were to see me now, I am in. There has been a journey. The journey's been 7 months so far, and it's included a number of things called GI, or gastric intestinal bleeding, which is internal hemorrhaging, which kills you. And that... There are no appropriate words, Stephen, when you're talking about this. So you find yourself using language that is common, things like interesting. Well, of course, it's not interesting, but you don't know what else to call it. So when you are presented with nearly dying and you're holding your wife's hand, if you've never experienced it before, it changes the dynamic in your relationship.
What does it do?
It makes things that are important, and you find that you've only got room for a very few of those. So you quickly refocus. So things that would irritate in the past don't even register anymore.
Like what?
Anything. Ordering a taxi and it being late. terrible things like planning an afternoon out and then it dares to rain. Gutted. You know, things like that.
What about money?
Well, I am lucky and blessed. Not because I ever had money, but because I had a pension. And I worked for many years for the City Council. And what happened was that they took over when I became very poorly. So the journey went that I was diagnosed. I then had a CT scan, and they found that my tumour was what's called T4. It's stage 4, and typically, well, there isn't a stage 5. It's when it goes from one organ to another. And my other organ just happens to be my pancreas, the one they can't do anything about. So that's what makes it inoperable. And we had 10 days during which they diagnosed that I had a T4 tumour, and then they told me in a second consultation, we're terribly sorry, we've got some bad news for you, which I'd already thought they'd given me, to be honest, but your tumour is inoperable and we can only give you palliative care. Further to that, the palliative care was chemotherapy.
What does your brain do to you when you're told that?
This is where I'm uncomfortable, because when you're told you're going to die, I believe that you find out the sort of person you really are, not the sort of person you tell people you are. Now, you can be shallow, self-centred, self-opinionated, internally focused. You can be all of those things, and that's your personality, and I'll pass no comment about that. I liked to think that I was someone that thought about others. I was never quite sure that I was. I was always someone that thought that perhaps they were a nice person. I never really had great confidence in that. I've got an awful lot of faults. What I found out when I was diagnosed as being life limited is that I immediately started thinking about everyone else. And I couldn't help that. That's just what happened. I didn't design it. It's just the way I'm built. So I was blessed to actually find that the person that I really am, and this is the boastful thing, which is just as it is, because it could have been negative, is that I seem to be happy thinking about all those around me, and I get a lot of strength from that. And my happiness, which brought us to this interview, is all about other people. I just have that much love around me, and I'm that lucky.
I can't understand. Look, our agreement tonight is that we just talk frankly to each other, right?
Yeah, fine, okay.
And we don't wrap this up. I'm not going to try to wrap this up in language where you know I'm trying to wrap it up in language. I can't understand how you've used the word blessed twice tonight.
I can explain that.
When you are dying.
Oh, no,
I'm expecting any human being to be angry.
No.
I'm expecting them to feel hard done by.
No.
Why me?
No, not at all. Never even crossed my mind. Let me explain some stuff. I worked for the council. I explained this, and then I went off at a tangent. But the relevance was my pension meant that the council kicked in when I became very ill. When the chemotherapy started, and I had my first intestinal bleed, which should have killed me. My wife contacted the council, and they were amazing to financially protect my family and to do best by me. It was right and proper under the regulations that I could be retired on ill health grounds. This was done incredibly quickly. And what it meant was that financially we're the same as if I was 65. And that's the package of retirement that I've been given. So rather than being someone who's got problems with finance and having to deal with this, but also having to deal with it with the guilt that the family now may lose their house. So you could call that blessed, couldn't you? So that's the first thing. So I'm blessed. So that's to give it a shape. Financially, I don't have any problems. So let's look then at being on this journey. I'm on the journey by myself. I have nobody. It's not true. You imagine being someone who's got some friends, but lives a bit of a loner, a bachelor lifestyle, and then he's told he's got cancer. And he goes home and cries in his masonette by himself. Imagine what that would feel like, Stephen. Well, I'm blessed because I've got my family. When I'm ill, and this is not a boast, I have to text those that are closest to me so they can tell everyone else that I'm okay. I send over 70 texts. Now, that's got to be described as blessed, surely. When I had my retirement due from the council, it just so happened that I chose that day to have a intestinal bleed. So I was hemorrhaging, dying, if you want, but not dying in the long term, dying that day. And I got people coming. So I went to the gig, and I didn't look as fit as I might. So people were queuing to say hello to me while I sat on a stool, and then queuing to say goodbye. And there was over 400 people came to a retirement do, and I knew every one of them.
What does this teach you about life and how you led your life up to that stage?
I've always been someone... You see, when you know you're going to die, you do think about these things quite a lot. And I've always been someone who I considered myself to be very selfish. And this needs a little bit of explaining, because my definition of selfish is I fervently believe that if you give, you'll get back more than you give. You'll receive more than you give. I really genuinely believe that. And I'm proof of it. I am living proof. Or if you want to get dark, I'm living proof at the moment.
You see, you know, Steve, I'm lucky enough to be in the situation that I'm not suffering from terminal cancer at this moment in time. I have no terminal illness.
No.
But it could be round the corner tomorrow morning. Well, it could be in a week's time, a month's time, a few years' time. And the reason I'm fascinated in talking to someone like you is because, you know, I like most other normal, ordinary people, I get caught up in the rat race. I get caught up in worrying about stuff I don't need to. I get stressed. I get angry. And I want to hear it. I want to hear it from someone who can look back on it now and say, is it worth it? How do you avoid it? What do we need to get into our mindset? What you know, if we're living our life and we're trying to maximise the life that we have, what's the thought process we should have while we're still healthy?
Oh, if you could do that, you'd be special indeed. I don't know who it was that said there's no focus like that of the condemned man. If I had to guess, it was Samuel Johnson. But it's true. I mean, I'm not condemned as I see it. And I'm sitting here now talking to you in remission, which means that my tumour's just sitting there reading the paper. It's quite happy at the moment, and I'm as fit as I can be, although this isn't just a Wolverhampton accent that's affecting my voice. I do have a cold. So that's my only real illness at the minute. It does knock me about a bit when you get a cold, when you've got a tumour. But I don't think that you can... You can't change how you are, and we're all creatures of habit. When you are confronted with, as the quote says, the focus of the condemned man, then you are empowered. To be able to convince yourself to have that focus when it's not real, well, you know, that's not something I could ever do. I live that life, Stephen. I worked a lot. My relationship with my wife, who I've been married to for some 26 years now, is such that we lived a very close life, but we did separate things. So working long hours in my various fields was something that was tolerated within the relationship. All of a sudden, overnight, I should have died, and I'm retired. And mentally, that's taken a long time to get used to. But again, we can revisit, if you want the phrase blessed. No one has put a foot wrong. You know, there's a thing about eggshells. When you've got cancer and people find out, the one thing that they said to me was, we didn't know what to say. Well, that's a very, very interesting point, because we all know that there are things that you would think that people shouldn't say to someone who is terminally ill or has got something very wrong. I mean, they've been listed recently in an article in The Guardian, which I thought was an excellent piece. Excellent piece, but it was definitely that journalist's journey that they were talking about, not my journey.
The top one in that piece was, I feel so sorry for you.
Yeah, my response to that is, well, yes, I went to see the Wolves this afternoon, 2-0 to Manchester City. And that puts it all into perspective, doesn't it?
Are you afraid to die?
No. But I'll tell you what I am.
am.
I'll tell you what, you are afraid to die?
Yeah.
What are you afraid of?
I'm afraid of...
Are you a man of faith?
No. I'm afraid
well, then
of...
you've got a light, a switch just going off if you're not a man of faith, aren't you?
I'm afraid that it might be painful. I'm afraid of that reality that everything that you've done, it's stopping forever. I'm afraid that I won't have achieved what I want to achieve in life. I'm afraid that I won't have caught up and done all of the things that I want to do, because you kind of think until a brick wall hits you, you kind of think, I've still got loads of time to do that and do this and do that.
Well, all right, then when we can deal with that very easily, that's not difficult at all, is it really? If you've got fears, the one thing that you don't want to die with is regret. Because when I was dying the first time, the fact that my study was in such a mess was really difficult for me to deal with, and moithered me terribly. So I'm lying there thinking that I'm going to go, which I basically was. And the only thing I could think about was how untidy my study was. Now, there's no logic to that. So when I got better, what did I do? Well, I needed a lot of help because it was a mess, but I tidied my study. So if you know that these are your fears, you can address those fears while you're alive, because those fears you've got about dying, mate, are not about dying. They are fears that you haven't done in life what you want to do. Now, you can address that, and then the fear of dying will go. You've got no fear of dying. You've got a fear of regret. That's what your fear is.
How long have the doctors given you to live?
Well, they're very good. I have an oncologist called Professor Ferry, and you know, when I found out his name, I really hoped his first name was Brian, but it was David. Gutted, I was. But he's a superb guy, and so we Googled him, and we found out that he's one of the world's leading authorities on stomach cancer, and all my wife Septina could say was, "What's he doing in Wolverhampton?"
Yeah.
But he gave me a year, which, when you think you know, when you've got the darkest of thoughts in your head, you'll settle for that. We didn't think we got more than weeks, to be honest. And then we have the bleeds, which we've had 3. So they make you realise that you don't have any length of time at all. You have as long as you have. And then, because the tumour shrunk so much with the effects of the chemotherapy, they then extended that to 15 months. But I'm in the top 10% of responders. So if you think that 15 months gives you up to, as an average, gives you up to 30 months, well, then I'm in the top 10%. So you can do the maths yourself. I mean, in simple terms, with as fit as I feel now, I'd really like to see Christmas out. That would be nice.
So between now and Christmas, what are the things in life that you want to do? What are your dreams and aspirations?
It's
for a man that thinks he's got 8 months left.
Very strange, you know. But there's this thing which I don't know whether it's something that's embraced in this country as much as it is in America, but there's the concept of the bucket list. And we came to look at that, and there wasn't that many things on it. But the one thing, there's no logic to any of this, you know. There's no logic. These things are very personal. Do you know one of the things, well, the one thing that was really regretful? I lay in the well, I was in the consultation suite, and I was told that I'd got no more than a year to live. But before that, when I was told that I was inoperable, the one thing that kept going through my mind is that myself and my daughters had both sat through both Iron Man films, The Hulk, Thor, which wasn't as good as we'd hoped, and Captain America, and I was going to miss the Avengers Assembly. You can't make that up, can you?
No.
You couldn't make it up. So the fact that in the next week or so we're going to go and see the Avengers film, we're as pleased as punch with that.
Do you know, I wonder, Steve, if you know, this sounds quite callous for me to say this, but it's inside me, so I'll say it. I wonder if you are in denial.
Yeah, very good point.
I wonder, are you covering it all up inside yourself to protect yourself.
Close friends have said to me that they thought that I was pretending. Well, if I am, that suits me.
Yeah.
Because I go to bed now without crying. That took a long time.
So you did have dark thoughts, and you
Goodness me! Don't you see? Talking to you like this is lovely, but there is a balance to it, and let us visit the dark side. I've got so much love. Look what I'm going to do to those people when I die. Now, how can you live with that? The illogical guilt that you are causing those around you so much pain is in itself the only thing that hurts.
So you've been going to bed at the beginning many nights crying?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was crying every day for the first month or so. Now I cry not that often. I cried today when I was watching the marathon.
Why?
Well, you can feel it coming, but it's to do with other people. So you've got a lot of stories of people who had lost loved ones and were running in the marathon to raise money for cancer charities. And you might not think that that's heavily focused in the marathon, but when it's like when you buy a red car and every other car is red that you see on the road. It's exactly the same when you've got cancer. When you've got cancer, the references to it are everywhere, and they were prevalent this morning in the marathon, and it was lovely. The stories were, but when I cry, I'm not devastated. It's just emotion, you know.
Have you got faith in your life, Steve?
Not greatly, but isn't it strange that the one person that I need close by me when I'm very ill is the minister, the woman minister called Joan, who married Septina and I 25 years ago, or 26 years ago. And last year we retook our vows before I was diagnosed, 12 months almost to the day before I was diagnosed. We retook our vows, and we agreed that it would only work if Joan would come back and do the service for us. So she was back in the family, and she is really the first person I call upon. And she has, when she comes to see us, we do pray, and I feel a lot better for it.
And so if you don't really have faith in your life, do you believe when you die, that's it, you stop?
Well, it's an interesting thing. I think I'm feeling quite guilty now because you will take any option, and I don't think that's how faith works. I think I'm sort of open-minded, but I think I'm open-minded now for very selfish reasons. I do make comments about it. They're not really fit for broadcasting, but I do make references to God.
What is the lesson for us all listening to this?
Oh, my goodness.
As we live our lives.
I don't think I'm in a position to. I
think you are.
Well, I tell you what I think, and that is I think we're probably all stronger than we think we are. And I think that without focus, we often live a life that isn't as fulfilled as it could be. And you must value things that are really important. And there's no problem, and there's no need to wait until it's too late to value those things. You imagine if I'd have had a heart attack, we wouldn't have been having this conversation. My wife and I wouldn't be living this idyllic life that we currently do. We're sharing it with all of our friends in a way that we're always too busy to. Always too busy to. Well, it's amazing how much time my friends can now find to be with me, because it's a matter of prioritising things. There is a thing I would say, and it's not answering your question, but I did mention it earlier, that friends are people that can say whatever they want to you. And this thing of eggshells, where there are things that you shouldn't say, and you quoted yourself number one in the article from The Guardian. I feel so sorry for you. I would agree with that one. I don't think any of my friends would ever say that. But all of the other things, there's many other things. People shouldn't feel that they can't ask you how you are. When I had my first bleed, that was very serious. And there was a chap in the bed opposite who was a cancer patient, but he had got abdominal pains. That's all he got, mate. abdominal pains, and he had 24 get well soon cards. I nearly died. I'd had one. I was gutted. One get well soon card. And the reason, of course, was because people knew I was dying, so they couldn't buy me a get well soon card. That's it. So I spend all my time, and it's worked now. It's taken 6 months, 5-6 months, but none of my friends have got any eggshell worries at all. They'll ask me how I am. I have this cold. A friend of mine said to me the other day, keep away from me, I don't want what you've got. Now, that meant the cold, of course. But the eggshells, that would stop them saying that because they'd think I meant cancer.
Well, listen, Steve, it's been fascinating listening to you tonight, and for whatever time you've got left, I hope that you enjoy the rest of your life, Steve.
Well, I can only tell you what I honestly believe. I mean, people can believe what they want. I may be in denial. I'm doing a very good job of it if I am, and I will continue with this denial because I'm believing it myself. So I'll settle for that. But why don't we speak again when I'm a little bit further along the journey, see how I feel then, eh?
That would be really kind of you.
Yeah, not a problem, mate.
Thank you so much for talking to us tonight, Steve. It's made me think, and I'm sure it's made other people think too.
Well, as I said, I must reiterate, I'm only talking about my journey and that of my friends. We're all on the same coach together, but other people's journeys, there will be different.
Well, by the way, you've given me permission tonight to say whatever I want, so sorry for Wolves going down. Relegated today. Hard luck, mate.
Ha! Gutted! Yes, I tell you, we lost 5-1 to West Bromwich Albion, and I phoned my wife and I said, record match of the day too, and she said why, and I said because I want to watch it again, because when the final whistle went I felt worse on that day watching that match than I did when I was diagnosed. That tells you something.
Thank you, Steve. Lovely
speaking to you, mate.
Well, I just think that was incredible because of his contribution. If you want to react to that tonight, and lots of you are, 85058 on the text, at Stephen Nolan on Twitter, 0500 909 693. The Bishop Stephen Lowe and Charlie Wolf coming up to review all of tomorrow morning's papers very, very shortly indeed. I can tell you that we have just recorded an exclusive interview with the Foreign Affairs correspondent, Channel 4 News' Foreign Affairs correspondent, Jonathan Miller, who will tell us about his detention in Bahrain and how he hopes to get home. You'll hear